Good evening, class. I thought I would do a brief video about Modular 5, Modular 6, which deals with the compare and contrast SA2 assignment. Um, we'll look at the actual assignment itself, kind of go over some of the rhetorical persuasive appeals, and just remember that this Sunday, your peer review is for SA2 is going to be due. I still have several SA1s to grade. I hope to have a good bit of those graded, um, if not all of them by the time Monday hits. I've already graded some, so you should be able to go in and see the comments. And for what I've been reading, for the most part, um, those that send rough drafts to me or tutor.com or both, those who participated in the peer review, most of those particular final drafts are getting the higher grades in the course. So a lot of interesting personal narratives. Um, so I'm hoping that trend of really good and high grades continue with SA2, because I do realize it is a fast-paced course. And next week basically is going to be quote unquote our fourth week here. So basically we've been 1 month into the summer semester already. So we're already into the month of June. We do have a holiday that's coming up on Thursday, June 19th. It's going to be Juneteenth. That really doesn't impact so much online courses as it would, hybrid or face-to-face. So sort of keep that in mind. That's really going to be sort of like a 3-day work week, Monday through Wednesday. So we're going to have a longer holiday weekend as it relates to that. And then we come back for about 2 days. And then we hit into our brief summer break, covering the 4th of July weekend. So we will talk a little bit more about what's to come, because you do have a Respondus midterm essay timed writing that's going to be coming up soon. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in the weeks to come. There is information on Blackboard about downloading the Respondus lockdown browser, as well as information in your particular simple course syllabus. So you might want to go ahead and read that information as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to share my screen here, and we will look at some of the stuff that's going on for the next couple of weeks. So again, if you look, Modular 5 and Modular 6 is open. The first 4 have closed because we've already basically finished those. As we get closer to the end of next week, I'll probably go ahead and start opening up Modular 7, Modular 8, because that's really the next 2 modulars. So if you look, you're going to have your basic reading material that talks about compare and contrast a little bit more in your ebook, page 111 through 121. We get into a little bit more of classification. This type of rhetorical mode may be more of a use as we get closer to the research aspect of the course. We got a research paper here really that last month. So you may want to think about writing a classification type research paper, or, a lot of folks kind of like the compare and contrast, so they sort of kind of continue with a compare and contrast type of research paper. But you're going to go through and read a couple different rhetorical modes that we are not really having time to do just individual essays on. But you can kind of look at them and see maybe which particular mode may be helpful to you as it relates to a research paper topic coming up in the next couple of weeks. We also look at misplaced and dangling modifiers, or some information about that on page 208 through 213, along with parallelism. If you click here, obviously there's some videos that talk a little bit more about compare and contrast. that talk a little bit more about classification. So again, you may want to look at those before you start clicking any links or reading anything in your e-text. If you need additional help, then you probably want to go to those the e-text or those hyperlinks. The grammar videos, really this should be kind of a review. Dangling and misplaced modifiers may be a new concept to you because you might have not really understood those maybe in high school or even really talked too much about them, but they've always been around. So you might want to double check to make sure. Right now, I haven't seen a lot of folks doing those with SA1. But that's not to say as you start to write longer papers and get a little bit more involved with these particular rhetorical modes, that these type of errors don't start to creep up, because they do. Same thing with parallel structure. You might want to look at that particular video. If it's been a while since you really learned or understood what parallel structure, you might want to go back and look at that. We will come back to this particular PowerPoint because it is kind of lengthy. I'm going to hit sort of the high notes. There's a lot of examples in there. I'm not going to really sort of go over right away, just because I want to give the chance for those that haven't really looked through this PowerPoint time to go through and understand what I'm going to be talking about it here directly, and give them a chance to sort of read through the examples and pinpoint and pick out the stuff that this particular PowerPoint is doing. But really, we need to look at SA2 and the topic, really, in this case. So the first thing that you should realize, I'm going to blow this up, is let's look at the requirements. Because some of y'all with SA1, if you're losing some points, it's because you didn't follow the proper MLA9 essay format, which I provided a video for that in the Modular 1, Modular 2 section. You can always go to Purdue OWL. There's some information about MLA9 there. You can look on YouTube how to set up a MLA9 essay. It will go through step by step as well. So again, we're still using MLA9 format, Times New Roman size 12 font. You want to double space everything. You want to have a header only on the first page on the left-hand side. You want to have your last name and page number in each top right-hand corner. 1-inch margin should be all the way around. Usually when you open up Microsoft Word, it's already set at 1 inch. The new thing here may be in-text citations, or what they call parenthetical citations, and a works cited page, because you're going to be comparing and contrast two ads or two PSA ads. And you really want to, you want to have those pictures on your or in your essay. I need to see what you're comparing and contrasting. So you can, you know, if you want, you can have just a page sort of devoted to those two ads, so I know what you're doing. Because otherwise, if you're just writing about it, I don't have the visual, right? I need to see the image of the two ads. So you can have that sort of, you know, you can use that as an appendix page, or you can have it at the very beginning, before you really get into, you know, your header and the actual essay. But I need to see the two things that you're comparing and contrasting. So the length of this paper needs to be 3 to 4 pages. In other words, it needs to be 750 words to 1,000 words, not including the works cited page. So really on your works cited page, you should only have two things, and it should be those ads or that PSA announcement, some kind of, you know, those two images of that. And I can show you how to go about using a works cited generator. This is stuff that you're going to need to know as we get closer to July, when you're going to have to use additional secondary material, research material for your research paper. So we're looking kind of ahead. But once you kind of figure out what to do, it should go fairly easy, I hope. So important dates, remember June 8th, which is this Sunday by 11:59. That's when your peer review needs to be in. Again, once you submit your peer review, that's 50% of your grade. The other 50% will come in once you review this time, two peers' essays, and you answer those particular questions on that review, that peer review sheet. Answer them as much as you can, as best you can. You might not be able to answer all of them, all depending on how much your partner has provided, but you should be able to go through and give them some feedback, some criticism that is both positive and constructive in a way that I hope you will get something out of the whole ordeal, and they will be able to get something out of it to help improve the final draft before that is due Sunday, June 15th. So make sure, I know some folks, last time when we did the peer review for the narrative, you only got half credit because you only uploaded your particular rough draft. Or you didn't upload your draft, but you commented on somebody else, so you also get 50%. So it should be one of those gimme grades. Hey, did you follow instructions? Did you upload your paper? Did you comment on a partner's paper? It should be a very easy 100. Now, just because you get a 100 doesn't mean, like I said in previous emails, that you probably don't have to go back and you're going to have to go back and do some work on that draft, because if you just turn that regular draft in that you submitted for your rough draft as your final draft, you're probably not going to get 100 on it because you didn't fix anything. You didn't address anything that me, or let's say if you submitted it to tutor.com, they told you to sort of, fix this or that. You didn't fix that. You didn't fix anything. Or if your partner, your classmate suggested that you do something and you didn't do it. So you're probably going to need to take the next week leading up to the 15th and revising your essay maybe multiple times to be able to move that grade from the C to the B to the B to the A. That's the whole deal with the writing process. If you've been reading some of the e-texts or watching the videos about the brainstorming and the writing process, that type deal, it goes beyond just making one rough draft. Sometimes you need to make multiple drafts to be able to reach the grade that you want. So if we go back and look at what this particular prompt is, right? So it says choose two advertisements or public service announcements, PSAs, that address similar themes or issues. For example, anti-smoking versus anti-vaping, climate change awareness ads from different organizations, fast food versus healthy eating, etc. There's a lot of ads. There's a lot of PSA announcements. These things have been going on probably way before you were born, and they'll probably continue to go way after we're gone. So you can look at classic ones from the 50s and 60s. You can look at current ones from 2024 and 2025. You can look at stuff from the 80s, 90s, and the 70s. You can look at how anti-smoking ads were in the 70s, compare them to the 90s. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach this and have fun with it at the same time. These messages can be in print, video, digital format. Your task is to analyze, compare, and contrast how each ad uses rhetorical strategies to persuade its target audience. Pay close attention to the purpose, tone, rhetorical appeals, the ethos, pathos, and logos. So if you go back and look at that PowerPoint, it talks a little bit more about those rhetorical appeals. That would be helpful when it comes to, developing some of your body paragraphs in this particular essay, and the actual medium. And what I mean by that is it a print ad like you would find in a newspaper or magazine? Is it a digital ad like you would find maybe advertisements or commercials on the internet or through cable or radio, I guess you can consider. You can also think about billboard ads. Sometimes there's depending on if you travel a lot, you may see a lot of billboards that have some of these advertisements on them as well. Your essay should explore how and why each method is constructed the way it is, and how effectively each reaches its intended audience. So if you look here, your essay should, and we'll blow this down a little bit, Introduce the two ads or the PSAs, giving brief context. Who created them, when, where they appeared, right? That is sort of coming to your introduction. You want to give a brief intro about your two ads or two PSAs. Give a little bit of background information about them. Clearly state a thesis that presents your insight on how the rhetorical strategies compare and contrast. So again, that thesis statement is going to be that very last complete sentence in your introduction paragraph. It's going to sort of set up the blueprint for the rest of your paper. If some of y'all didn't do so well with essay 1, it's probably because you didn't really have a strong thesis statement at the very end of that introduction paragraph. And again, when we say statement, we mean a period at the end of the sentence, not a question mark, not anything else but a period. It has to have a subject, verb, and complete thought, right? You want to use specific evidence from each ad to support your points. For instance, images, word choice, sound, music, message, if some of that stuff applies. So this is where you would have to use maybe quotations from that particular ad or PSA, and you would have to cite it in text or parenthetically throughout the body of your essay, and also make sure that you have that works cited page that corresponds with that particular source. You want to analyze the purpose. What is the ad trying to accomplish? Tone, is it serious, humorous, urgent, etc.? And the rhetorical appeals. How does it persuade? Through emotion, credibility, or logic? So again, going back to the pathos, ethos, or logos, consider the medium, and the medium is basically the platform, how it's presented, TV, Instagram, billboard, YouTube, etc. And how that affects its rhetorical approach. Discuss how effectively each ad reaches its target audience and whether one is more persuasive than the other. So that's where you would definitely have the two particular ads or PSAs to do that sort of compare and contrast. So you're looking at the similarities and you're looking at the differences of those particular ads or PSAs. Your conclusion paragraph really should reflect on what your audit or analysis reveals about advertising strategies or public messaging in general. So going back to this PowerPoint with the rhetorical appeals, we're going to briefly go through some of this. Ethos, pathos, and logos. You've probably seen some of these, heard of some of these maybe. They're really big in drama and theater. They're also really big with rhetoric, which this course is, composition and rhetoric. So in a lot of ways it says, in other words, how to get what you want with arguments, get money, gain power, and be successful. So a lot of these rhetorical appeals you do see in politics a good bit, especially around election time. A lot of lawyers like to use these particular appeals, but writers and movie producers and screenwriters and playwrights like to use these particular appeals. And a lot of times, a lot of our singers like to use these particular appeals, sometimes without us knowing. So basically, ethos, pathos, and logos come from Greek. They are Greek words that essentially mean the following. Ethos means ethics, character, and credibility. Pathos is emotion. And logos is logic and reasoning. These are basically the three rhetorical appeals, the way to persuade an audience. The rhetorical triangle is the art of persuasion, as you can see here. Whether you are trying to persuade someone to think something or do something, ethos, pathos, and logos form what is called the rhetorical triangle. A combo of all three appeals is most likely to persuade the audience. So when you're looking at your compare and contrast as it relates to your ads or your PSA announcements, see if you can use all three of these rhetorical appeals, like they're talking about here in this triangle, to be able to persuade your audience. In this case would be me and your peers, because again, your peers are going to be wanting to or needing to read your rough draft as you start to upload those before Sunday. And the thing about the rough draft is, too, I wanted to mention this. Try to look at various students' drafts, meaning don't try to pick the one that everybody else seems to be commenting on, because it seemed like last time certain drafts got more attention than others. The whole purpose of this is to give everybody, I hope, the ability to look at everybody's work and comment in a respectful and positive and constructive manner. Now, again, if you wait to the last minute to upload your draft, you should know you may not get a lot of comments on your particular draft. So if you had a week or 2 weeks to upload a draft, but you wait until 2 hours before it's due on Sunday, then chances are you're probably not going to get a lot of people to look at your work, um, just because of the timing and stuff. So the earlier you can start producing and uploading drafts, the quicker we can kind of get to them. Now, I realize I haven't really did a lot with the drafts for SA2, and I kind of apologize for that. That's because I'm trying to get SA1s graded so you can already have something to go on when it gets to SA2. I also got a couple other classes that I'm having to grade job packet because I'm teaching a business and technical writing course for my TRF students. But if you send me a draft via email as a Word attachment, I will definitely give some attention to your draft. So if you don't see a lot of comments this week, it's because, I got a lot going on as it relates to grading and trying to get grades caught up in this particular class as well. But if you do want me to read something of yours, please email me so I can give it the undivided attention that it needs. Otherwise, when we do these peer reviews, because there's more students than there is an instructor, I'm really going to sort of rely on you and your class to sort of help each other as it relates to some of these peer reviews. Now, some of them are going to be better than others. Obviously, it all depends on your skills. But again, you have a couple other options. You can not only just use your peers, you can also email me, like I just mentioned, but you can also go to tutor.com, which is built into your particular class, and you can have a tutor look at your work as well. So in hindsight, for this particular assignment, you're really going to have up to 4 sets of eyes, or potentially 4 sets of eyes, looking at your work if you utilize all the resources that are available to you. All right, moving along. Aristotle was an ancient Greek intellectual. He studied and wrote about nearly everything from science to philosophy. He wrote Rhetoric, which examined the art of persuasion. In this text, he examined ethos, pathos, and logos. So if you don't necessarily like rhetoric as much or like writing a whole lot, you can think of this guy for that. Part of that reason. So why should you care? Well, persuasion. Because persuasion is a part of life, and these appeals are tried and true. You have probably used these appeals without even realizing it, and you will probably use these appeals again. But if you can fully understand these appeals, you will know exactly how to use them to persuade others to think or do something. So think about when you were a little kid and you wanted a toy or you wanted a dessert. Over time, begging used to work, but that sort of got kind of tiresome. And your parents probably sort of caught on to the whole begging deal. So you had to do something different. You had to persuade them using ethos, pathos, or logos without really even knowing what you were doing at 5 years old to give you that ice cream bar or to buy you that particular model airplane or go to the movies. You had to persuade them in a way to make them move, to motivate, and to, ultimately buy that thing for you, because that's basically what you were trying to get. You were trying to get somebody to buy something for you. You probably do that even today. If you got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, husband or wife, a lot of times you persuade those folks in a way to get what you want. It's the same thing with politicians. Whether you're Republican and Democrat, male or female, the politician is always trying to persuade you the citizen, the public, if you will, for money and votes. You give me money and votes, and in return, I will do this. Now, do they always go through their promise? Not 100% of the time. And, as parents too, sometimes we don't always go through. I mean, we have to be honest. We don't always go through 100% of our time with our promise that we're going to do this or do that for our kids either. We try our best, depending on what it is. But we also have to sort of put in the good parent cap, put that on and say, well, does Johnny really need to have 4 scoops of ice cream? Probably not. So maybe we will do 2, but you persuade me in a way or convince me in a way that you deserve to, right? What are you going to do? Are you going to clean your room? Are you going to take out the trash? Are you going to mow the lawn? Whatever the case may be, you're going to bring back good grades. There's got to be a give and take there. And in a lot of ways, that's how you persuade people to kind of do what you want them to do. Sometimes it don't always work, and sometimes it works really, really well. So you need to know how to play the persuasion game to win your audience over with ethos, pathos, and logos, right? The ethical appeal, the ethos, is an appeal to the speaker's ethics. That seems a good bit of today's society. It seems like we're lacking a lot of moral ethics. We see this, being played out in nightly news and newspapers, some of the TV and movies, some of the music that's being produced. But basically, the ethos or the ethics is his or her character, credibility, and authority on the subject. The audience must trust the speaker in order for persuasion to happen. It's not enough to be credible. The speaker must deliberately demonstrate this credibility and reliability. So you got to go beyond just being, hey, a good character or a good, have good credibility. You need to have authority. You need to know your subject like the back of your hand and be able to back it up with real facts, not with fake news or fake information from some AI chat site or bot. You need to have the hard stuff. You need to have the articles. You need to have the stats. You need to have the books. You need to have the people. You need to have all this stuff, laid out in order that you're sort of like being the lawyer on paper. You're arguing for your case. You're trying to persuade your audience or your public to say, hey, I have good character. I have connections, authority, and credibility that X is going to happen, and this is why. How to use it, right? How to use ethos. So show that you are experienced and knowledgeable on the subject that you're writing about or talking about or discussing clearly. Use your own knowledge when you can, but cite others when you can't. So you want to use a good bit of your own if you have personal experience with that particular field of study or subject. But when you don't necessarily want to BS your way through, because a lot of times those that do have a little bit more knowledge than you do can sort of smell and look past the BS. So you want to add in experts. That's where the sources will come in, right? The books, the journal articles, the databases, that type stuff. So you want to show the audience that you are basically a good person. You have good character. Respect them, connect to them in a way, and show that you are professional. Use appropriate language and tone, dress appropriately if applicable. So again, if you're talking in front of a crowd of folks, obviously you're going to want to dress the part. Pathos deals with the emotional appeal. This is where you're going to start pulling at the heartstrings of people. Think about some of those PSA announcements about dogs and cats, right? For 75 cents a day, you can feed this dog and this cat, or you can save this particular bird's life. The same thing when you see late night infomercials or commercials about the children that are starving in Africa. for a little less than $2 a day, you can help this particular child get the nutrition that he or she needs. So they try to pull on, especially if you're a parent. If you're a mother, you're probably going to really be sort of tied to that particular child, and even fathers will too. They really try to pull on your emotions, and the pathos is an appeal to the audience emotions, right? By evoking emotions, the speaker is more likely to persuade the audience, right? Because you don't want any kind of children to totally go hungry, do you? Or to be dehydrated, right? It's hot in that desert. This kid hasn't had water in hours. And you see the image of the child, right? Really skinny. You can see the ribs poking out. Probably a couple more hours. If he doesn't have food or water, he could die. But it's you, the audience, all the way over the United States, for only $2 a day, can save this kid's life. So they pull, they use that certain tone and that language. Sometimes they put in celebrities, and they have sad music playing in the background, that try to, provoke you, right? To pull you almost into tears. Oh no, we can't let that dog go to the shelter, because if nobody adopts him, and then, within the next couple of weeks, he's probably going to die. They're going to put him to sleep. Same thing with that cat or that bird or that turtle. So they, it seems like if they show you kids, and if they show you poor animals with that sad face going on, put a celebrity on there that says that they pretty much, support it, whether they do or not, that could be another question. But then you have this low key, really soft, sad, depressing music that plays in the background, and usually comes on about 1 or 2 o'clock when you're already kind of tired a little bit, or sleepy, or kind of waking up. You're going to be a little bit more maybe inclined to give in, dig into your back pocket or dig into your checking account and give them a couple dollars for that free t-shirt or that picture of that particular animal or child that you're supporting, right? Um, Pathos can be very powerful because humans are emotional creatures. Think about sometimes when you're watching a movie and you see a death scene or a funeral scene. Depending on how well it's built up, you will feel like you're part of that particular person in that church or that funeral home. It may bring you to tears. That's usually the effort for pathos, is to change your emotion. It's either to make you sad and depressed and crying, or it's to make you angry and mad and ready to fight. There's a lot of different emotions, right? Can make you feel happy, can make you feel sort of neutral, objective, subjective, can make you laugh. So there's a range of emotions there when it deals with pathos. Any emotion, like I said here: fear, sympathy, love, joy, petty. Pathos makes a personal, emotional connection to the speaker or writer to his or her audience. That's the whole purpose. That's why you see a lot of politicians go around and kiss babies. They want to have that emotional appeal, like, hey, we're just like you, we're just normal people, right? Um, we just want your vote, and ultimately, we want any kind of cash you can give us, because that's going to help our campaign, right? Pathos, how to use it. Know your audience. Know what emotion or subject will move them in the way you want it. So you want to be careful, right? If you're talking about a sad story, you want to use, motifs and metaphors and language and music that's going to fit that. If you want to try to be more upbeat and happy, then you're not going to want to talk about sad things. If you're trying to be happy, you want to try to keep it, optimistic, positive. So keep in mind when you're approaching this compare and contrast, how to use pathos when it deals with your ads or your PSA announcements. Um, Make it personal for the audience. Tug on their heartstrings. Again, we talked about this here momentarily, or scare them into persuasion, right? A lot of times you hear politicians especially when it comes to the climate change. Now, again, I'm not trying to get too political, whether you're for or against it, that's really up to you. But you're going to hear a lot of folks, you still hear folks talk about the climate change. If we don't get rid of these gas guzzling trucks and cars, in the next 5 years or 7 years, we're not going to have any ozone left. And, basically the sun rays are going to come in and they're going to, when they burn you now, it's going to be beyond a sunburn. It's going to give you, radiation poison and all this. So they try to scare you into, well, maybe we should think about getting electronic vehicles and battery power this maybe we should think about having water power and wind and solar power now. They try to scare you into that. And a lot of times it's easy to do just because, the general consensus when it comes to like a politician type deal. Most people don't have enough time in the day to read, to listen, to watch everything, whether positive or negative, on climate change. We just don't. We have other things going on in life. We have kids, we have family, we have jobs, we have multiple jobs. We travel to work. We have to go to the grocery store. We have to pay bills. We're going to school, whether it's in person or online. We just have a lot going on, right? And in between there, you still have to eat 3 meals a day at least, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You got to shower once or twice, morning and afternoon. Brush your teeth, brush your hair, get dressed, do laundry. So, I mean, we're so busy. You got to sleep at some point too, right? Um, but a lot of times, when you're a lifetime or lifelong politician, you have a staff that kind of does this stuff for you. So you have all the time in the world to sit in your office and read for 17 hours a day or watch videos about climate change. And you can, build your talking points based on the luxury that you have because you don't have to pay a bill. You have somebody that's going to do that for you, or you don't have to go out and, you don't have to cook your own meals because you got a chef or a butler that's going to do it for you. So they, when it comes to using the scare tactics, they realize the most average folks, working, voting folks, are not going to have a time to go back and sort of go through everything because they do have a life, right? Um, you want to use descriptive, vivid language and imagery to make it more real. So most of you did a really good job when it came to the descriptive and vivid language to your essay one, your narrative, because they usually go hand in hand. Telling a story, you need to have descriptive language to it. So you want to use examples and stories that will engage the audience and evoke emotions. Logos, logical appeal. Logos is an appeal to logic and reasoning. Think of common sense, right? Some folks have common sense, some folks don't. The speaker must prove his or her claims with evidence and reasoning. So this is where you would bring in stats, you'd bring in research material, folks that have degrees or work in that particular field, pie charts or graphs, that type deal, stuff that you would cite, right? Like if you're going to quote, this would be that particular aspect of the rhetorical appeals is use the logos, the logical. Strong evidence and solid reasoning is difficult to dismiss. So logos is essential to persuasion. How to use it. So make sure your argument makes logical sense. Avoid logical fallacies, flaws in logic. So if you look at next week's modular, there's some information about these rhetorical fallacies. You probably want to start looking at those. I would say you probably want to look at them now before you even start writing your rough draft if you haven't already. If you've already did your rough draft, as you start to revise from the rough draft to the final draft, I would definitely double check and make sure that you're not doing some of those logical fallacies, because that will sort of impact your overall final grade for Essay 2. Make sure your argument is clear and easily understood. If your audience can't understand it, you can't convince them. So if you give a lot of stuff that's convoluted, And then they have to go and look up every single word, or go back to Google and try to fact check everything you say. One, that takes a lot of time. It's exhausting, and plus, it starts to damage your ethos. It starts to damage your logos, and then the folks are going to have a different pathos toward you because now they're going to be kind of angry because it seems like you're trying to pull a wool over their eye or something. So be careful of that. Use facts, use stats, use numbers, use charts, but make sure that stuff is accurate because you can mislead your audience with charts, numbers, with stats. And here's where it gets a little bit into the examples. I'm not going to go too much in this because you can go back and read this. This talks about sleep deprivation using the rhetorical triangle to find stuff, right? This stuff's going to be highlighted in red. What is ethos, logos, and pathos? There's some commercials here you can kind of look at if you're still trying to decide what to announce, or ads or PSAs that you want to use. You can kind of look here. You can go to Google Images. You can probably go to YouTube to find some of this stuff. So again, this is the particular PowerPoint. And I was going to show you the other real quick. If you look at Modular 6 and you click down, you will see, one, you see where your discussion board is. Two, you see those fallacies. So we may talk a little bit about these by this time or so next week, but I think this is sort of self-explanatory. This is just a chart that has some. There's other ones up there. These are the main ones. You can kind of blow this up and kind of read. The straw man is a really big one that you would see or hear about in a lot of arguments. You have a loaded question, the bandwagon, begging the question, slippery slope. You probably heard these before. Middle ground, appeal to emotion. So you want to make sure that you're not doing these in your own particular writing, whether it's for SA2 or for anything else from here on out, because it does sort of impact. And you can thank these guys, Plato, Aristotle, all these guys right here, for some of this stuff. Again, I will open up 7 and 8 as it gets closer because that's going to be when we start talking a little bit more about the midterm essay coming up. Otherwise, just to show you, right, several have already put in. So there's a couple things that I can look, right? I can see here, and it says your word count. I know I have 750 to 1,000 words. I'm not going to be so big on that because I know that's a good bit. I want you to be able to go through this peer review, and after you read your partner, answer a good bit of those questions. Now, you're going to be able to answer all of them, like I said earlier. Probably not all of them, but if you can, I would. You don't necessarily have to go on forever. You don't have to give me a paragraph for each one, a sentence or two. Should be suffice, because if we pull this up, I have it set up in sections for you. You should just be able to use this. Now, you can copy and paste it if you want, but if you know how to, right? And what you could do is this basically gives you information that I just presented to you on that particular page. But what you can do is you can do this. You can get rid of this crap, put the name of whoever you are looking at, right? Whoever your peer is, and then just go through here, give yourself some room and type up your stuff. You can save this and upload this back to your particular partner. Now, some of these questions you should be able to do right off the bat. and they probably don't have to be that long, like style. Is the paper in the correct MLA 9 format, heading, font, spacing, citations? That could be a yes or no. If it's yes, just put yes and move on. If it's no, then you need to sort of describe what is missing. Is there issues with the spacing? Is there issues with that, it doesn't have a header? Doesn't, have a works cited page or a citation, which is really that's the next. And are there any in-text citation or works cited for the two ads? Are there any grammar or punctuation or clarity issues? A lot of times when you read these things, you can see, you may not necessarily know what the technical name or grammatical term for it, but you can say, yeah, paragraph 4, that third sentence just sounds awkward to me. When I read it out loud, it just doesn't, make a whole lot of sense, or it's hard to really understand. So, I mean, you can tell stuff like that. You don't necessarily say, oh, I'd hope you can kind of use some of the lingo, especially from the last, 3 or 4 weeks. Hey, you got a comma splice in the first paragraph. But if you're still trying to figure a lot of that stuff out, you can just say, you may want to go back and double check your punctuation in that first paragraph. You're using a lot of commas, and I don't think maybe you need to use as many. So you have the first part, your thesis and introduction. Again, answer a good bit of these as much as you can. You would think if most people that are going to upload their draft is going to have that introduction paragraph, so everybody should be able to really answer these questions here. Everybody should be able to do number 5. Everybody should be able to probably do number 6. Now, where it's going to come into play, depending on how long the paper is going to be 2, 3, and 4. Now, again, if you are, need to have 3 to 4 pages, which is what the assignment initially states, and you upload a draft because you're running out of time and only have 1 page, well, there's only so much your partner is going to be able to give you for 2, 3, and 4, because you don't have 3 pages or you don't have 4 pages. You don't have enough there for them to really answer truthfully on questions 2 or sections 2, 3, and 4 here. And that's fine, but just kind of keep in mind, even though you did sort of fulfill the requirement, you did upload something, you did respond to 2 of your peers, you only have a page. So you're not going to get a very high grade if you only turn in 1 page for your final draft. So, keep that in mind as you go through these. And I can tell whether you're replying to somebody else or not. So in this case, I should see 1 response. That will be you, the writer, because that's going to be where you upload what this person did here, right? They uploaded it as an attachment. That's fine. Now, Brandy, in this case, hasn't responded to 2 other people because it says no replies. So right now, what Brandy would have, if she doesn't go back before the 8th, is a 50%. Because the only thing that she completed was uploading her own draft. She didn't go back and look at number 2 and do 2 and 3 here. Now, if it was the flip side, she had 2 replies but no response, and I'm going to say, well, Brandy did 2 and 3, so she's going to get 50% there, but she didn't do the other 50%, which was the easiest part, and that's upload her own rough draft. So that's, that's where that becomes 50. If you don't do it, right? If you just miss the deadline or just simply skip it, well, you're going to get a 0, right? And once this closes, it closes. I can't reopen it up just because of time. So you're just going to have to live with that 50 or that 0%. Now, if you do both of them and you do well, then you got 100. Again, it should be a very free, easy 100 when we do these peer reviews. Now, when we get closer to the midterm, we're not going to do a peer review for the midterm. And that's mainly because you're going to have to do the respondents. You're going to have to do 1 hour, right? You're going to have to type an essay from scratch for 1 hour. So you can't send me a draft. You can't send tutor.com a draft. You can't send, me a draft or a peer. The other thing is that you might want to kind of keep in mind is when you submit your essay. And right here, I think I got, maybe nine or so left. You're going to see this thing called originality report, which deals with safe design. It's checking for plagiarism. If it's between 0 and 10, you're pretty good. Like here, it's all green and check. If it goes 11 to 100, then we need to look at it a little bit more, because this is going to have a different percentage, obviously, and the color code is going to change. I think most folks right now are in the green because it is a personal narrative. I don't see why you'd want to, you're not going to find somebody that's wrote about your personal life, or at least you shouldn't. But let's say that something was, 50%. If it starts to change from orange to yellow, we have problems. That's telling me you're probably copying and pasting. You could be buying a paper. Sometimes it looks, if it's AI written, sometimes that will flag it. But you can also go here, and you should be able to click where it says additional comments, and this will highlight where you're getting the information. So I see it and you see it. So you can't come back and say, well, I think that person probably copied me. How can they copy you when that article has been up online for the last 15 years? That's, kind of impossible when that thing has been up since 2005, and you probably were just 7 or 8 years old at the point. So, I mean, be careful, be ultra careful about how you respond to instructors when they ask you those questions, because we can see the same thing that you see over here. And a lot of times it will take us to the very exact website or article or database or book or whatever it is that you're getting it from. Even sites where you're having to pay, $100 for an essay or whatever. It's going to take us to that stuff. And there's really no way that you can say, well, no, I didn't do it. They did it. Or I don't know how that happened. Yeah, I know how it happened. You did it. I mean, we both see the proof. So cut the crap and just be honest about it. I hope folks, as we go along, don't go down that route. But I see a lot of that when we get into really the last sort of month of the semester and we're getting into the research paper, and people start to freak out. They procrastinate. They don't ask the questions when they need to ask them early on. They don't try to get the help early on. They have a lot going on because they got final exams and final tests and stuff coming up in other classes. Especially in the summer, if you got kids, we only have one day for finals, and that's going to be July 31st. So that last week of July is going to be really, it's going to be rushed. Because, you're also thinking about if you got kids going to school or returning to school, you got to buy them stuff. You got to get them ready. You got to get an open house. A lot of schools are starting earlier and earlier now. So everything is just like a juggling act, really, that last week or two of the semester. And that's usually when folks will start to do things that they will regret because they will get caught. They start, buying papers or copying and pasting papers and plagiarizing stuff. Or now, because AI has been a big thing, I'm just going to go to AI and I'm going to let AI write it and go through a couple of different rephrasers and stuff. And I'm never going to get caught because AI knows what it's doing. And a lot of times, a good bit, we can check AI too. We can use your same AI program, run your paper through it, and ask if an AI bot wrote it, and it will tell us. There are certain AI checkers we can use. So even if you're going through the different types of rephrasing or taking it from English into Arabic, back to French, and then back to English again to try to throw us off, there's a lot of different things that we know because we've seen a lot of AI papers. A lot of times the AI papers will not 100% follow the instructions that are on my assignment sheets. They use certain words over and over and over again that I've seen over the last 3 or 4 years. They produce fake sources that don't exist. So if I Google a source and I can't find it on Amazon or anywhere on Google, then I know that AI just made that source up. And usually what happens is that I will have a student in one class that uses 4 or 5 same AI sources. And then in another class, a different student will basically use those same 4 or 5. And by then I know the game is up because I'm like, I can just go to your sources and see if you're writing AI papers. Because if if you're supposed to have 3 or 4 sources, and you have 5, and of the 5, 4 are bogus, and I see those same 4 appearing in my other classes, other instructors that teach this class are having the same issues with the same bogus sort, then we know that you're using some sort of AI program. So don't get into that habit. I usually don't see that until it gets closer to the end, but sometimes, during this second essay, because you're having to do a little bit of research and you're having to use ads and critically think. Sometimes students have issues with critically thinking because they haven't really been taught properly how to do that middle and high school. They start to freak out and they want to go sort of the easy path. Now, the other thing is that you should be able to find, and you should be able to see this on the Dropbox, is I usually provide a grading rubric that will tell you like content's 35%, and this is, you get between 75 and 100. This is, outstanding, that type deal. And I may also put some comments in here to sort of guide you. But I usually put some comments, on your paper as well as additional feedback. So, keep that in mind as you move on. The thing I was going to show you real quick here, this is basically, I'm looking up PSA ads on Google Image. There's a lot here. This is one over obesity. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. I'm going to show you how to use some of these generators. So I could use this one if I wanted to use this particular image, right? So I'd probably need to find another one. I would probably look for something maybe from the 70s or 80s that dealt with obesity. If there's anything that's really been around since then, it seems like obesity hadn't really become a major problem until maybe the mid 90s and going forward. But because again, we didn't have a lot of sugary options. When we went to public school, we had PE, we had recess. We played outside when we were kids. We had, neighborhood baseball and football games. We rode bikes, we skateboard, we boxed, we fought, we wrestled. We did a lot of stuff. We went to, ponds and lakes and pools and we swam during the summer months or the beach. We had some video games. Obviously, we had, Atari, Game Boy, Nintendo, PlayStation. But a lot of us, if it was really nice outside, and we had a neighborhood of, a pretty decent sized neighborhood with a lot of kids and friends from school, we would go outside and play until when you see those, videos with the sad sort of music on Facebook about the light pole when the light came on, it used to be our call sign to come home, right? And a lot of ways it was, especially when during the summer months when it didn't get dark until about 8:30 in certain places. We would stay out, 8:30, even past that, 9 o'clock, and didn't really have much of a worry. We kind of knew who our neighbors were. We kind of knew our boundaries depending on our age and that type stuff. Um, Not to say you didn't have, issues with people kidnapping kids and that type stuff. You still had that. Um, we just didn't hear about it a lot, right? I mean, you didn't have a 24-hour news cycle, really. I mean, you had CNN, but they didn't focus a lot on kidnapped kids. We didn't have social media, and that's where you really find a lot of the, local stuff with kids going missing and that type deal until somebody really starts to be big and needs to be brought out to a more of a national attention. But a lot of times we were sort of, at a certain age, we started governing ourselves the best way we could. We had the water out of the water faucet. Um, You know, there was times that our parents just say, "Hey, get out of the house. We got to clean. You need to go out and do something." Um, so we enjoyed that. Now it seems like most folks would like to be on some sort of electronic device, and it's not necessarily a video game at this point. It's, you know, a tablet, a watch, a phone. Um, I mean, you think about Halloween. Go around some of these neighborhoods at Halloween and really look to see how many kids are out doing trick or treating. I mean, that used to be a really big sort of kid-friendly holiday. The same thing with, you know, after school when it's spring or fall when it's not so hot. You know, now you have to be careful so you're not getting heat exhaustion and stuff. But, you know, think about March or think about October. See how many kids are actually outside playing at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. I mean, you may see some. If you go to a park, you may see a little bit more. But as it relates to like neighborhood kids, you barely even see that depending on where you're at. So let's say that you wanted to use this particular ad. So you would take this web link, and then you want to go to, you know, I went to Google, and what I typed in was this, and you can kind of look at here, Works Cited Generator MLA 9 edition. And I use this one, but of course you have pages that you can go to. I will let you decide which one you want. As long as the one that you go to, you make sure that it has MLA 9 already selected, because some folks or some websites still use MLA 8 when we're really needing to use 9. Now you want to pick the source. Since we're doing a website, I'm going to click that. And what I'm going to do here, because if this website is sort of legit, it should fill all this stuff out for me. Now I may have to go back and fill some stuff in if it doesn't complete everything, but it's going to make my life a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and hit paste and fill in. And if you look, it does all of this stuff. What I need to look at, you know, a couple things is the year that it was published and to see if there's an author to it. So I'm going to go back here, and it's telling me posted. So I'm going to use that as a publish date, March 25th, 2013. So I need to go back and fill that in. So 2013, 25th, and it's March. Okay. And now I'm going to look for an author first and last name. Now, sometimes it may or may not have that. So if it doesn't have it, then you don't need to make one up. You just leave it blank. So now I'm going to go back to that original page, and I scroll through, and usually you would see an author pretty much up front here. And since I don't see that, I'm double checked. I'm going to look down below. Maybe this is the author. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to copy the first, paste that in, and then I'm going to do the last. So in a lot of ways, some of this is like a copy and paste job if it doesn't fill everything in for you. And then from there, I'm going to hit add reference. Because a couple things this is what it's going to help you do. One, you're building your works cited page. So you're going to be able to download this and make it into your works cited page. Everything will be in alphabetical order, including, you know, last name, right? You want to put everything in alphabetical order by the author's last name. So if you did a second one, if it was an A author last name, A would come before S. If it was Z, then obviously S would come before Z. But if you look here, it shows you how you do your parenthetical or in-text citation. And you can copy this. Because it's a web link, you don't have page numbers, or a web page, you don't have page numbers. Now, if you have a book or a journal article, generally you're going to have page numbers that you can put with your last name. So it'd just be like Smith and then 2. You don't have to do page 2 or comma 2. It's just Smith and 2. But again, if you need help with that, send me a draft that you want me to look at that particular works cited and your in-text citation, because you're going to need to include your works cited page should have 2 sources. It should have your 2 PSA announcements or your 2 ads, one of the 2. All right, so I'm going to end it there. It's a little over an hour. I think this will give you enough to sort of use. I hope everybody has a good rest of your weekend. Watch out for the rain and the storms. I know it's been pretty stormy here in Camden over the last couple hours. But again, make sure that you submit your peer review and you follow the instructions for that so you can get full credit by the deadline of Sunday. And then, if you want me to look at a draft of yours personally, please email it to me as a Word attachment, and I would get something back to you before you have to turn in your final draft on the 15th, which would be, I believe, the following Sunday. So you have the 8th for the rough draft, and then the 15th becomes the final. So you have, roughly, because you had to turn in the first one on June 1st. So in a lot of ways, you had nearly 3 weeks, 2 weeks to work on the draft and the final draft when it comes to really both essays. So I try to give you about 2 to 3 weeks if you use time wisely. All right, so I'm going to get off of here. I'm going to go ahead and get back to grading some of your SA1s and looking at drafts of SA2s and some drafts of my other classes. Again, if you have any questions, please don't be a stranger. I will not bite. There's no stupid questions. Obviously, I don't know how to help you or address any of your questions if you don't ask. So please ask. If you want to set up something as an in-person, if you're close to Camden or Glen, and you can travel to campus, we can do an in-person office hour or tutoring session. If you want to do something via Teams because you are not really close to Camden or Brunswick, or you got a scheduling conflict, again, Mondays and Wednesdays generally work the best for me. I can meet on Teams pretty much anytime after 7:30, between 7:30 and 6 on Monday and Wednesday. Now, Tuesdays and Thursdays, that'll probably have to be after, between 1 and 6, because I'm kind of busy in the morning with some back-to-back classes here on campus. Otherwise, I hope everybody's doing well. And until we meet again via video here next week sometime, good luck on SA2 and the rest of your summer courses. It's hard to believe that next week we have been here a full month now. So if you look at it time-wise, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We only have, starting next week, we're only going to have 6 weeks. So if you look at it, we only have 30 days left until the summer semester is over. It seems like, it's 30 days. That's going to go by slow. I can tell you. After we come back from July 4th, those last 3 weeks, you're going to go to sleep and you're going to wake up and it's going to be August 1st. And now we're getting ready for fall semester. It's going to go by fast, especially since we have Juneteenth coming up. And then we have 2 days off for a summer break, and then we come back and bam, it's only 3 weeks, which at that point, we're only going to have about 21 days left. So kind of keep that in mind because your final exams for your other classes are only going to be one day, July 31st. All right, so everybody have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay cool, stay dry, and I will talk to you during week 4.